Happy Tuesday evening, everybody. I'm so excited that there were people already waiting. That just validates me. It's edifying. So thanks for those of you that are really interested in this conversation. I have fixed, thanks to my good friend Brenda and the help of Rockman with, looking at vetting headphones and microphones, but I have fixed the problem of the echo. NPC is very knowledgeable with lots of good information. We're going to talk about some things together, but we won't echo anymore. So hooray for that. Thanks to Brenda and welcome everybody. And then please welcome my friend Mr. NPC 3.14. Hello.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here this evening. Thank you for sharing time with.
Yes, and your beautiful radio voice. So we are going to talk about Joseph-Gregory-Hallet, but before we do, we're gathering a little bit more information because this is one of those learning together things. I know next to nothing about the guy, and NPC has been learning a little bit about him, so we're not doing like some detailed breakdown of this guy. We are going to just talk about it. This is a fireside chat. This is something that we do from time to time and how we kind of learn. You guys have seen it, though. You're clear with that. And I think, NPC, that sounds comfortable to you, right?
And this is, instead of a deep dig, this is more like we're scratching the surface with this, because this is a it's actually as old as 2013-14 from what I can tell, and we'll be able to do a dig on it. For right now, need to light, because there's also other folks doing interviews with him. He's making his rounds. We're figuring some stuff out as we go here, and it at first seemed so extraordinary and ridiculous that you almost didn't want to even take it serious. But like, there's actually some legal documents and such which I sent to you just meow. So you'll be able to present those on the screen, and in a few instances even where these the Vatican or whomever will say, oh, where they talk about miracles or signs or what have you, where the church will declare this or that. So in this manner, they've got like a list of 260 different things they say qualify this gentleman also as this king of the UK, which what a lot of folks may not realize about the situation here with the UK and Israel is that Israel, as we know it today, was actually created by the UK, and Jerusalem itself is a city-state. So these are some things that I ran across in research in times past that didn't really, I mean, it seemed important at the time, but I didn't realize how it could be important. Well, this is the type of thing that could maybe reveal that. So I'll bring up a link on Jerusalem too, so that we can kind of read over that, so that we can kind of understand like what the real constitutional underpinning of Jerusalem is, even to understand like.
On the 31st of March of 2020, this legal document states that Joseph-Gregory-Hallet is a declarant that solemnly and sincerely declares, the declarant solemnly and sincerely declares that this certified declaration, Joseph-Gregory-Hallet is the Mashiach, Christ, Messiah, and King of England, is true and correct, and affirmed on 26 January 2020 and confirmed on 5th March 2020, rightfully signing in the throne and crown by his will and honor stamp, wax, seal, emboss, and in wet ink as witness on the second side. Well, that's a curious thing that he's the Mashiach. I guess he's the first one for the Jewish nation.
And that's what, I've actually watched some videos and done some reading, and it's not just the opinion of a few, but many that that Messiah or Moshiach for them is a political leader, an earthly political leader that they think will bring them great success, wealth, power, all these things. And so when Jesus tells us to learn a parable of the fig tree in Matthew 24:32, and as I've discussed many times before on your show, the fig tree is Israel, is real. So it is real indeed. So anyway, what he means is it's going to start growing, right? So if you look at the plan they have for how they want greater Israel to be, they're talking about how now they're going to start making their move, right? So they're going to start incorporating Iraq and Syria and, Libya, Egypt, Lebanon, Lebanon probably too, actually, and Jordan, even though they don't seem to have any warlike attitudes toward them, they're just absorbing them diplomatically. And so you're going to begin to see that the flag, where it has the two bars on it, the blue to blue, that represents the entire country from body of water to body of water. So I think it's from like the Red Sea to the Black Sea or the Caspian, maybe, but it's one of those, or a river perhaps. But either way, it's substantial bit of territory, and it's much more than they occupy now. So as we'll see, that is the fig tree, but it will not bear fruit. And so we're going to see things like the drying up of the Sea of Galilee, and the date palms no longer bearing dates, so on and so forth. So the climate change we're always talking about. Well, we already knew before the climate started changing that it was going to change. So these things are already preordained, and we often find that with a lot of the cabal, I will just call them that, I guess. They're aware of these things that are going to be happening. And so I think they are just trying to capitalize on a lot of these opportunities, knowing that the chaos is ensuing and going to start. They're like, oh, okay, so we'll have to plan to jump on this and, carbon tax, etc. So I think what they're doing here is the timing's just right. They got this guy, they say is a hidden king. He's done all the research. He can show you the lineage himself. But we got some videos here that we can try to hear them talk about it too. But anyway, it looks like he's just related to all the same people that are in charge now. So I'm not so sure what might change if this guy's in charge suddenly. But he's got connections to Nasara, like you were saying. And so I think that we could possibly see some enticement with, bills. Excuse me. We'll take care of all your bills or whatever if you take the mark of the beast. No more student loans, no more credit card debt, or the Satan always offers the same things: wealth, power, and intelligence, eternal life. And so I think that's what we're going to see coming out of this is they're going to want to start ruling from Israel. And I guess this guy might be king. But yeah, it sounds extraordinary, doesn't it?
Yeah, let's show this video real quick of Star Trek. I'm going to put it in a faster speed, so while it says 9 minutes and 43 seconds, guys, it's going to play just a little bit faster than that, so it'll be the whole amount of time. And I think the last minute or so is just a little advertisement of watch me if you like my stuff. So without further ado, I'm going to play that for now. So hang tight.
Right.
Oh, hold on. I got to fix this. They can't hear it, so I got to fix this real quick. Hang tight another second while I fix the sound, please. This is always a fun, it just comes and goes as whatever. I can't always have my sound set to the headphones. Okay, I think we're good now. Let's try again. Wait. Is this working? No, still not working. Okay. I'll make
Are
it
you
work.
talking about
I'll make it work.
character and
Yeah, Q.
race use? I can talk about it until
No,
it actually.
yeah, I'll get it.
I don't see it on my screen, so I know I can talk about it. So I'm a big fan of Star Trek. I never really, I'm not one of those people that's watched every episode. One of the characters that always caught my attention was this Q character, and periodically I would find videos on watching stuff, but and then when the Q stuff started popping up, it kind of popped in my head one day. I was like, oh wait a second, I better watch something on see if that's was. Is it working?
You're breaking up a little bit, but I got it working now.
I thought you said it was working. So
Yeah.
I'll be quiet. But this is like a race of creator beings in the universe. Their job is basically to just maintain a balance.
Yep. So let's watch.
Spirit.
Let's watch this real quick, and then you'll have plenty to say on the other side, which I appreciate. So here we go.
See you on the other side.
See you on the other side.
Among the many species of the alpha, beta, gamma, and delta quadrants, some have evolved to share certain traits and characteristics, possibly due to a common ancestor who may have seeded life on a number of worlds during their interstellar travels. There are other species, however, which differ wildly from the two-legged humanoids which populate the galaxy, such as the wormhole aliens, also known as the Prophets of Bajor, the Changelings of the Great Link, or Species 8472 of Fluidic Space. And while the many varied and exotic species of the galaxy each have unique skills and abilities, perhaps the most powerful of them all were the immortal Q of the Q continuum. From the perspective of humans and other similar species, they had godlike powers, able to manipulate energy, matter, time, and space. Many of the Q believed they were the highest and purest form of life, and during one occasion, when a Q was transformed into a human, he claimed to have an IQ of 2005. However, there are some limitations to their powers, as they could be killed, though the death of a Q was a serious issue with lasting galaxy-wide repercussions. A Q, later known as Quinn, made it seem as though they evolved over eons to become these powerful beings. Yet another Q, who was known throughout the Federation, claimed that the Q have always existed. Whatever their origins, the new era, as they called it, saw them reach a golden age where they explored the universe and shared thoughts and opinions about every subject imaginable. And while some of them continued to influence galactic events wherever they deemed appropriate, most became lazy and apathetic, choosing to simply maintain the status quo without any changes that might disturb their society. Yet things at last started to change when a member of their species broke with normalcy and rebelled against the system, even growing fond of taking humanoid form and interacting personally with less advanced beings like the humans of the Alpha Quadrant. In the 24th century, as the Federation began to explore further into deep space, this rebel Q appeared to the crew of the USS Enterprise, accusing their species of straying too far from their home system, calling them a dangerous, savage child race, unprepared to deal with the dangers that awaited them. Captain Jean-Luc Picard disagreed with this assessment and defended humanity, claiming that they had made rapid progress and were no longer the violent and greedy people their history might suggest. Placing humanity on trial, it was decided that Picard and his crew would be tested, made to deal with the mystery of Farpoint Station, where a species possessed a type of technology that could build objects of great complexity, seemingly out of nowhere. When the station came under attack, Picard was presented with an opportunity to use violence to put an end to the problem, but instead used his mind to solve the puzzle, discovering that a sentient being with incredible powers was being held as a prisoner, and in response its mate was attacking the facility. By ensuring the release of the creature, the attack was stopped and the mystery solved. Having passed their test, Q allowed them to continue on their journey exploring the galaxy, but told them the trial was not over and he'd be watching their progress. The next time they met, Q informed them that humanity was proving to be an interesting species, and that they seemed to possess an insatiable curiosity, a desire to grow and explore that the Q could not comprehend. There was even a possibility that humanity might one day evolve to become similar to the Q, or even surpass them. As a result, Q chose Commander Riker, first officer aboard the Enterprise, to be given the incredible powers of his species in order to tempt him into joining the Q continuum. In this way, he would serve as a model of human behavior which could be studied to bring new ideas into their realm. However, Q proved too arrogant and confident in his ability to convince Riker, agreeing to stay away from the Enterprise should he fail. Ultimately, he was unable to convince the first officer, and so Q was forced to leave them. Many now grew impatient with the rebel Q, as his actions had proven so disruptive that for a time he became exiled from the continuum. Returning to the crew of the Enterprise, Q then tried to join them on their voyages, offering to help guide them through the many dangers and mysteries that awaited. However, Picard refused, and so Q transported their vessel 7,000 light-years to see a cube-shaped ship from a relentless and merciless species known as the Borg traveling through space. The Enterprise only survived the encounter when Picard admitted to needing Q's help. As it so happened, the Borg would eventually travel through time, resulting in some of their drones crash-landing in the Arctic ice of Earth centuries earlier. In 2153, several of these drones were accidentally activated by a group of scientists, allowing them to send a signal to Borg space, which would take 200 years to arrive. This message then pointed the way towards Earth, and may have been the catalyst that prompted the Borg to send the Q, encountered by the Enterprise. This implies that when Q transported Picard and his ship to meet the Borg for the first time, he did it not only as a game for his own amusement, but as a warning to give humanity time to prepare for the approaching threat. The rest of the Q Continuum grew increasingly upset with Q's actions, and so chose to strip him of his powers, forcing him to live the rest of his life as a mortal in punishment, and so he chose to take human form in order to join the Enterprise crew so they might protect him from his enemies. Although his integration into the crew was difficult, he came to care for them in his own way and even offered to sacrifice himself to save them from harm. The other Q, witnessing his selfless act, restored his powers and welcomed him back into the Continuum. In the coming years, Q would return and interact with the Enterprise crew on a number of occasions, and while his meddling was often negatively received, he helped Picard a number of times, even acting as a spiritual guide in confronting his past and understanding the consequences of life choices he'd made. During one occasion, Q visited the Federation outpost of Deep Space Nine, and there mockingly challenged Benjamin Sisko to a fight. Yet to his surprise, Sisko did not have the same aversion to violence as Picard, and proceeded to punch him in the face. 7 years after commencing the trial of humanity, Q once again appeared before Picard, arranging for another test, this time involving a time travel mystery, which the captain eventually solved. Q then confessed that the Continuum wanted to see if humans were capable of understanding more advanced concepts about the nature of the universe. However, it was then made clear that while they passed the test, the Q would continue watching humanity, proclaiming that the trial never ends. Several years later, when the crew of the USS Voyager became stranded in the Delta Quadrant, they accidentally released a Q from his prison, prompting the former rebel, now reformed Q, to appear in order to recapture the criminal. However, the Q, who was later known as Quinn, requested asylum on Voyager, explaining that he wanted the freedom to commit suicide, which was being denied. Captain Janeway then decided to hold a hearing, and there Quinn argued that the Q have been alive for so long and experienced so much, the Continuum was now a place where nothing ever happened, and where their people were so apathetic they no longer even spoke to each other. Quinn, who had formerly been one of their great philosophers, saw that the severe stagnation in their society was a problem, and became inspired by the antics of the rebel Q, who challenged authority and created chaos. He then pointed out the irony that the renegade was now just like all the others, and was even trying to stop another free thinker from rebelling as he had. Throughout the hearing, they learned Quinn was actually an important figure in galactic history, having influenced a number of important events of the past, including helping Isaac Newton discover his theories, saving the life of William Riker's ancestor, and was even involved in starting the 100-Year War between the Romulans and Vulcans. It was argued that such an important being could not simply be allowed to end his life, and that the repercussions of allowing it might be drastic for the Continuum. However, Janeway ultimately sided with Quinn and the rights of the individual, forcing Q to make him mortal. And while Janeway tried to convince Quinn to find happiness living out his mortal life, the former Q killed himself soon after. Although Q had argued against this action, he could not help but admire Quinn's conviction and became inspired to return to his rebellious ways. And so when word of Quinn's death reached the Continuum, a great civil war erupted, with Q leading a faction of rebels that wanted to change society against the establishment that wanted to keep things as they were. The war grew vicious, and many of their people died, resulting in a number of supernovas erupting throughout the galaxy. However, with the help of the Voyager crew, who became involved in the war, a peace was at last reached when it was decided that the rebel Q would mate with a female Q and produce the first child ever born to the Continuum. Yet Q Jr., as he became known, was not quite the savior they had hoped for, instead growing up to be wild, arrogant, and selfish. When Q arranged for Janeway to take the boy and teach him human values, his behavior improved, and these changes, along with the importance of his father, convinced the others to allow the boy back into the Continuum. Love Star Trek? Then why not check out Loot Crate and their special mission crate with exclusive Star Trek
There we have it. Okay, so there's a lot to kind of unpack in there. One of the biggest things that stands out, well, why don't you start with NPC, what you see in that video to be the most interesting? Oh no, hold on. I accidentally hung up on NPC. Everybody hold tight. Poor guy is probably wondering what happened to me, but don't worry, I'm coming back. Oh, well, anyway, one of the things that stood out to me the most was certainly the part where he talks about being a spiritual guide to Picard. There was all these things about Picard. Uh-oh, what's the swear word? Yeah, don't worry, NPC. I'm coming back. That was a total accident, and I apologize. I'm coming back. I think I'm actually voice connected again, so hopefully you can hear me. Go ahead and give me a hello if you're there, if you're back, NPC.
Yeah, I'm here, but the video, I was listening to your video at the same time, and I think there's a lag, so I'm going to reload that.
Oh, there probably is a little bit of a lag when you watch the video compared to, what's that?
Pause it now and I don't need it. Yeah, so essentially these folks were basically a class of spiritual creatures of some sort, and they could just manifest reality and such. And so what I want to point out here is that if you read about the Phaedrus, which is something Socrates, I think, wrote, In that story, Phaedrus, it talks about I think can't remember the particular person who did this, but anyway, there's a particular god or goddess that would turn people into cicadas, and they wouldn't have to eat or drink or do anything. They just danced and sang and created, and they were basically infused with the muses, right? Sorry, I guess my phone's ringing, so just let me silence that. So anyway, so basically these creatures were able to manifest reality, and they could teleport, they could snap their fingers and have an item in their hand, etc. And so anytime you're watching a movie and it refers to a deus ex machina, ghost in the machine, where God comes in and does something that would otherwise be inexplicable to kind of help out the people that are involved.
That's something that they
That's
say in the movie
basically
Donnie Darko too.
exactly. So Q would be the rabbit in a sense in Donnie Darko. It's the one that can do these extraordinary things and make it seem like he has superpowers or something, right? So they're just able to operate outside the common laws that we're familiar with because they're not from where we are, that they created where we inhabit, right? So they'd be considered like the angels or something like that, God type characters. So what's kind of interesting to add to that is that if you read about Phaedrus, and it talks about how that race got lazy and they didn't want to create or do anything anymore, and they didn't even talk to each other. They become stagnant, right? And so this rebel Q character, Quinn, I think his name was, he kind of represents like a Satan. And although I've not seen this necessarily portrayed this way in the Bible, I have read some other books that seem to relate to some type of philosophy I'm not entirely familiar with. It might be one of those that Alice Bailey was associated with, but where they say that Satan was like a necessary evil to prevent stagnation in the kingdom of heaven, I guess, if you will. So you see what I mean? So they're trying to say, like, even though like this rebel character is good, because like if he hadn't have done what he done, well, then they just would have all like just withered away into nothing. They didn't even talk to each other anymore, or do anything anymore. So he's kind of.
There's a movie like that. What was it called? I'll have to think of it. But it's Christopher Walken, and he plays another like fallen angel that Satan gets mad about because he's trying to cause another war in heaven when Satan already did it. But I'll have to try to remember what that movie was. It's pretty old now, but it's kind of what they were getting bored up there.
Well, essentially, with this Quinn character, he's this rebel, and so what he's doing is, as you were seeing on the screen there with the different quadrants, he starts meddling with the humans and allowing them to. They are characterizing this. They're saying that they're helping them evolve, or because they're a species that's got like some potential or whatever they said, and so he's hoping that maybe he can kind of like bring them into the Q continuum by mating with them. So that's why at the end of the segment there, it's starting to talk about how he mates and such with them, and that's where it's starting to kind of sound like our biblical stories, you see. So yeah.
And he also was a he becomes like a spiritual guide, which sounds very new age. And as I've said in my previous video that I was making, that Q is speaking in a very new age fashion, love and light, and the plan being a new age plan that they've talked about, that Benjamin Krim and Blavatsky and Alice Bailey and David Spangler have talked about their plan of being this love and light, and more of a Luciferian type of plan than a Satanist type of plan, which is why I think they hate Donald Trump, because I think he's trying to bring in the Luciferian plan, and it's the old guard is the Satanists. But there was something about the legacy stuff, that the legacy system I sent you recently too. I don't know if you had a chance to, that it just reminded me of that. But anyway, um, so somebody just this person, Cloxy, just posted a video, by the way, that the Vatican acknowledged Greg Hallett via Gregory the Great. So that's interesting. But anyway,
Which organization was that?
the Vatican.
Vatican did it now?
This.
They finally recognized him now, huh?
Let me pull up this video.
The Pope dropped the vicar title on April 3rd, right?
Right.
That was actually during Passover. And also, the Venus was going through the Pleiadian constellation at that time, too, which it always does. Every 8 years, it'll pass through that.
Pope Francis certifies Joseph-Gregory-Hallet's declarations fulfilling the prophecy, Easter Friday, 10th April 2020, 7 to 8 p.m.
The 10th.
April 10th.
After he dropped, so he dropped it on the 3rd and then the 10th. So that's 7 days, a week. That's something. Weeks are used prominently in Daniel and Revelation. There's the 70 weeks of Daniel's prophecy, which is the 70 years, because actually week actually translates in improperly in the King James Version. So apparently week is a year. So in that final generation, but then it can also be up to 80. So, depending on how well people resist this, it could stab it off for a bit, but you can see how it's building. Just a little bit with the gentleman, about this gentleman. What else I know about him?
Yeah, are you talking about Joseph Hallett?
I just didn't want to start running.
Yeah, go for it. Go on.
So hear him tell this. I found him first on this Charles Ward channel, so I'll go ahead and drop this in the Discord real quick, just so it's available for folks. So this Charles Ward character had him on, okay, and these folks were all new folks, and they seem like pretty nice folks. Sorry to keep using the word folks, but anyway, these blokes from the UK were pretty nice. So seems all casual at first, and this guy starts, like, let's see, at minute 25, he's talking about Son of Man. So if you go that mark, that's where he starts really starting to make these claims and accepting these titles and talking about things like that. And those two fellows with him in this video, they didn't really seem to have things well put together. But there's another guy called Bodhisattva Love, and I'll drop his video link also. It actually shows the document over them. So he'll interview the gentleman with him. Then he does another follow-up video where he actually goes through the document. And so there's 260 different things that this guy's trying to say are like miracles, signs, or what have you. Some of them are pretty vague and not convincing, in my opinion.